If you want to know why I'm sitting on the floor, it's because my tripod attachment has gone missing. So we're sitting on the floor next to the cat tower. Chapter 2, Myths Make Legends. Originally, when thinking about my idea of iconicism, this chapter never existed. I had this kind of model, or these steps that I had observed icons going through repetitively in their process of becoming an icon. In doing research, I came across this idea that through icons, people experience powerful myths. And that set me down this new path of exploring the link between mythology, myths, and icons, which then became the second chapter of this book. So in my original outline, I wrote, icons are valued because through them people get to experience powerful myths, which is a quote from this great article that I read. I wanted to talk about the origin story of both BTS and the 1975, in particular Matty Healy, and I wanted to do an exploration of their key myths, etc. Yeah, that isn't a very clear outline. It was just kind of like a vague, like, yeah, I'll do some quick research about myths and then link it quickly to the 1975 and BTS. Sure, that's no problem. That's easy. I was very, very wrong. Essentially, my goal was to make this chapter super short and sweet. In fact, most of the chapters in this book are meant to be bite-sized, because this book is meant to be one of my easy books in comparison to Outer Limerence that was dense and very specific and all-consuming and really intense. This book I want to be about, in a sense, it's more broad, and I don't want to go too deep into anything. I just want to be able to explain the process of becoming an icon. So in my mind, this chapter was going to be at most like 6,000 or 7,000 words. And in my search to kind of try and find a book that would help me write this whole chapter, I didn't have to look very far. On my bedside table was a copy of Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces that my friend BZ, hi, had recommended I read. So it was sitting there waiting for me to read it. And one day I picked it up and was like, oh wait, this whole book is about mythology. So I had this book and I was like, great, I'll just read a bit of it and it will help me structure out this whole chapter and give me everything I need to quickly write this. Easy. Everything's great. But of course, it was getting towards the end of the year and I had to redraft the first chapter, which took way longer than expected. And it took me a long time to get back to being in a place where I could even approach this chapter that I knew very little about in terms of all the content that I wanted to write about. This chapter is the most foreign to me in the sense that I'm introducing all these new ideas that I've never worked with before. So I made space, I sat down, and I could finally begin early this year. This stage is called The Call. I was able to finish the first chapter of Iconicism. I have been trying to finish this chapter for 2.5 months, I would say. And it just wasn't happening. Not that I was sitting down and actually writing and it wasn't working, it's that I wasn't even able to sit down to do it. And in the times that I did sit down to do it, nothing would happen or something else would like kind of take my attention away from it. And I was getting really fed up because I just wanted to finish the first chapter of my book so I could move on to the next one. And I couldn't move on to the next one until the first one was at a place that I was happy with, because so much of the other chapters build on the first chapter and, you know, the third chapter builds on the second one, so on and so forth. So yesterday I sat down and I finished the chapter. References and all. 4 drafts. I have never spent so long on a single chapter before. So anyway, that's done, and today I am super excited because I am starting on chapter 2. And it's not like I'm going to sit down and start writing right away. Each chapter in the book I am looking to a main text to reference to get most of my inspiration from, like as a jumping off point. For everyone familiar with Outer Limerence, you'll know that I used a movie at the start of every chapter as kind of like a thematic marker for a bit of foreshadowing, just to really set the tone for the chapter to come. And in a similar way, I'm looking to other books to help shape my ideas and the flow and where else I look for this particular chapter. So today I start reading my next book and taking notes and kind of getting into the headspace for this chapter, finding out what its voice sounds like, what I actually want to say, what needs to be said, what the literature says, and seeing what comes up from my reading and note-taking process. So a very low-key day, but that's good. Like, not every writing day is going to be a day where writing happens. So as long as I sit here and dedicate my time to the book, I'm happy. Hello and good morning and welcome to a new week. Last week I had no success in filming my vlog. Every day was a write-off at the start of the week. And I'm afraid that's because I was trying to write my book and it's just not working. So something has to change. And I have to find a new way to approach writing the book and getting everything else done. I think I have to persist. I know I have to persist. This is my time. I've come up against these struggles quite a lot in recovering from illness. When I approach a chapter, I can no longer see it, I can no longer feel it, but as soon as I step away, I can see it all. But as soon as I go to that document to write it, it all disappears. So it's definitely a change in how I can conceptually hold things in my mind and work on them at the same time, which I already knew. We already knew this, right? Like, I've been talking about it for a few months now, and I've been dealing with this problem for many years. So what I did for the first chapter that really helped was that I just started writing an introduction that had nothing to do with like the knowledge building. And I kind of approached it from like a discovery thing, like, let's discover what this chapter is about as I start writing. And I wrote something that excited me and that told my story and kind of showed the position of the discovery and the narrative and what I was wanting to say and do in the rest of the chapter. So that's what I need to do in this chapter right now. I was approaching writing it as if I already knew everything and I just had to jot it down on a page, but that's where my brain is tripping up. So instead I'm going to go in like I know nothing and I want to write to discover. And I want to have fun and play around with ideas. I have not actually started writing yet, but I've had the biggest mental breakthrough about how to start writing this chapter, how to frame it, what to do. And despite having trouble with this book for the past few weeks, it finally came in handy, despite only reading the preface and like just getting to chapter 1. And of course, I'm using BTS because this chapter is all about mythology, storytelling, and I can't possibly use a better example than the mythology that is intentionally and otherwise imbrued and embodied and experienced by and with BTS. So I'm really happy. Mentally, I'm there. I'm on the precipice. Before I was Sisyphus and the rock, I was both. And now I am just some chill person on top of a mountain looking out at all the possibilities, feeling a lot less tortured. Now all I have to do is write, but I had my breakthrough. Just like that. Like, it's been like 10 minutes and I've had my breakthrough. 10 minutes to a breakthrough, like... Good morning. It is Wednesday and I finally wrote some of chapter 2. 251 words to be precise. Now that's pretty low and I know I can do way more, but considering for the past few weeks, every time I've gone to write this chapter, I've been super anxious and my body has gone numb and I've just had to lay in bed until I've calmed down, I think this is a massive breakthrough. So at the moment, I'll take what I can get. I haven't been writing it, now I'm writing it. Even if it's really, really painfully slow, which it was yesterday, I'm just going to roll with it. This second chapter, I want to talk about how through icons, people can live powerful myths. So in order to do that, I want to talk a lot about mythology, storytelling, identity, and so on. BTS are the best way to do this. Interestingly, they have a performance from 2019 Melon Music Awards where they go to perform Dionysus, who is a Greek god. And in the lead up to that live performance, they each have solo stages where they each embody 7 Greek gods. And I thought that was really funny because I want to talk about like the overall mythology of BTS and link it to the hero's journey and talk a fair bit about Joseph Campbell and Jung, of course, and maybe a bit of Freud, as one does. But then it was really interesting that in that performance, they were literally embodying the gods. So I'll be able to talk about their journey, their mythology, in the sense that there's a mythology that underpins everything they do, but then also the mythology that they intentionally bring into their music and their stages and their performances, which is a really, really cool thing to consider. So I'm just starting the chapter talking about finding them and kind of coming into contact with a really powerful myth, which the more I'm thinking about it now is like that hero's journey is what has united so many fans. I thought I would show you the evolution of my working documents. So as you can see, I work in Google Drive, which allows me to have a great history of all the changes I make. So this is what I first did when I started the document. I put the title up top and then I got this information from my overall chapter outline and just copied and pasted it in, so I kind of had an idea of where I wanted to go, even if everything completely changes. So then we can kind of see over time, I go back into the document and I add more. These are some more things that I want to talk about. Then I started to put in some research all about the hero's journey. And then I started writing. And this is over the course of one day. This was the first chunk of writing I did. I did a bit more writing. And then an hour later, everything changed. I was able to get absolute clarity on the document and write a whole lot more. So now it looks like this. So I start off with the title. I figured out a basic structure, which is going to follow the basic premise of a hero's journey. So it's going to be the call, the initiation, and the return. So this is where I did the bulk of my writing today. And then this is where I'm up to, and I've just added some little notes about where I want to go next in this part of the chapter. Even if everything changes, I cannot stress that enough. It's likely that everything will change, but this is just where I'm up to right now. And then here I leave myself notes. So this is note-taking about the hero's journey. And I'm seeing different ways that I can weave this in. There are a few different narratives going on. There's my story of how I want to become an icon and how I found BTS. There's BTS's origin story. I'm also interweaving the 1975 story and their mythology. And I'm also going to talk about ARMY, who are BTS's fans' hero journey alongside BTS. Then through all that, I'm using all of this to be able to cover these kind of main topics: storytelling and music, the myth of the musician, myths in BTS's work, myths in the 1975's work, their rise to fame, and also I'm trying to compare and contrast these two, which is why I'm using, they are my two favorite bands, but I want to use them to really show how different everything can look. And then this is my main argument of the whole chapter. Icons are valued because through them people get to experience powerful myths, and so that's when I really have to start bringing in everything about iconicity. And then this is where my ideas are not as developed. I want to talk about how these people are leading cultures with myths, and these myths are targeting national contradictions, desires, and anxieties. So that's where I'm up to for now. Slow progress, but getting this kind of basic structure down is so important so I can understand like the overall plot of the chapter. Even though it is non-fiction, I need there to be a plot. I need there to be a narrative arc, and that's why this is so important. What I found really interesting is that there are a few different ideas of what myth actually means, although they all have the same origin. A myth is something that's not true. It's a story. It's folklore. But also over time, it can be taken as real. I'll read an example. Myth. It's an interesting concept. Derived from the ancient Greek word mythos, meaning speech, narrative, fiction, and plot. By the 19th century, it was being used in English to refer to a traditional story, especially one concerning the early history of a people or explaining a natural or social phenomenon, and typically involving supernatural beings or events. Because of its roots in fiction, it is common to use the word myth in relation to something that isn't true. Similarly, mythology itself, the telling of stories with winged beasts and endless mazes, is not concerned with the truth at all. The difference being that it's not considered a lie. Siegel defines myth as not only a story, but a belief or a credo. He cites modern American myths such as rags to riches and the frontier, to which I'd also like to add the American dream for consideration. These are not typical myths, though they have been written about and exist in the collective consciousness. They are not based on an ancient story. They are beliefs, hopes, dreams. Siegel writes that for something to be a myth, a story, it be held tenaciously by adherents. It needn't be based in ancient Greek mythology, nor any realm of truth, though it can be on both counts. It just needs to be tenaciously held and believed. Burton and Son write that myths are an archetypal narrative that societies and cultures use to embody value-laden lessons about both the natural world and human nature. Myths play a fundamental role in shaping who we are on individual and societal levels. They often refer to where something such as a religion comes from or how we as a human race were created. A myth has to serve a greater symbolic purpose that adds value and meaning to people's lives. Further, and similar to an icon, a myth provides a pattern of behaviour to be imitated and assists in assimilation. It became really exciting to learn all of this about myths and just see the direct link between an icon and a myth and how icons embody myths. This set me down many different rabbit holes, and very quickly it became clear that I could not possibly introduce BTS and the 1975 in the same chapter. There is so much amazing content about BTS that I can link to mythology. Their use of literal mythology in their performance and lyrics. Like, they have a song called Dionysus, for Christ's sake. Like, it's that literal and real. But also, because of my work in the fandom, everything that I know about BTS and ARMY, I can actually see myths and beliefs being formed in real time. Like this idea that BTS finds you when you need them most, and how that plays out through the fandom. It's the most common saying. It is the mythology of BTS. It is something mystical and magical. How do they find you when you need them most? And do they really? And after working with hundreds of ARMY, compiling their stories and publishing many of them, there have been many instances where BTS have found ARMY when they've needed them most, on the brink of life and death. BTS have appeared. ARMY have heard them, they've seen them, they've thought of them, and that has turned their entire life around. Were BTS actually in the room with them? No. Did BTS ever know they existed? No. But somehow, were they found and saved by BTS? Yeah. That is how a powerful myth gets made, and it's one that we get to observe happening in real contemporary times. So of course, I couldn't fit the 1975 into that chapter. Gosh no. They would look very strange by comparison because they're fulfilling a totally different role in the book. So I had to let the idea of introducing Maddie Healy go for this chapter, and I honed in on BTS, which allowed me to open up a much deeper exploration of mythology. This stage is called The Initiation. I had a dream last night about Namjoon. I can count on my hand the amount of times that I've had a dream about Namjoon. And for the most part, I don't see people's faces in dreams, and I think that it's one person, but like they don't look like that person. But this time it was genuinely Namjoon. I saw his face, I heard his voice, he spoke to me. I was trying to find a Chinese restaurant, seemingly like in an airport, because I had been told that I was having a meeting with someone there. And I walked in and I saw him sitting at table 7. The colour red was really everywhere. It was on the sign of the Chinese shop. And he was wearing red and like camel. He said, "Hello, come sit down. I've been waiting for you." And on the table was my book, We were talking like we were friends and we had plans and something was about to happen. And it was something to do with my book. And it was such a strange dream because I never dream of specific people, or it's very rare to dream of specific people, let alone like celebrities, let alone Namjoon. And it's been so long since I've dreamt of him or really thought of him. So it was interesting that he came back. And it made me wonder, well, is it because he and his friends are working on an album and they've been promoting it a lot? And I always have this theory that like when idols are about to release music, that's when they appear like in the imagination of all their fans to like remind them like, pay attention to me, I'm coming back. It's like when the machine starts up again. It's when I start to dream of them. Or is it that I'm writing about BTS at the moment and he's coming back to kind of like shepherd in this new book, this new era? I think what he represents is my future, my hopes, my dreams, the things that are out of reach that I really, really want. Interestingly, like ever since I woke up this morning, my world has been slightly different. I can feel all my external sensitivities like shutting down, and my world is turning inwards, and my inner world is becoming so much brighter and louder and all-consuming, which is perfect because this is what I need to write. And it seemed that Namjoon needed to come along in order for this inwards turn to happen. It feels like I'm groggy and I'm half awake and the rest of the world is no longer existing, and it's just me and my thoughts and all of my ideas. It's been a long time since I felt this, but I think it's a really important part of my writing process, turning inwards. The answers are already in here and I just need to write them. And I don't need to know them before I write. I write to know them. I have been writing this morning and it's been going really, really well. I'm writing about BTS, which is one of the easiest things in the world for me. After 5 years of writing about them, it does come quite easily, quite naturally. The hardest task is remembering all of my sources, because I know a lot of stuff about them, but then I have to go find the original source to back up what I'm saying. But everything's going really well and I'm feeling super satisfied, which is one of my keywords for the year. Satisfaction. And although it's not going as quickly as I want, although it's not finished, although many things are not going my way, I am satisfied with my progress, and that's a really good feeling. 3 months to write chapter 1 was way too long. I'm not one of those people that's going to spend years toiling away on a book. These ideas that I have are contemporary. They're reflecting society right now. I just don't want this book to take forever. At 11 chapters, 3 months a chapter, that's 33 months. I don't have that kind of time. I have so many other books that I want to write. It has to be right now. Otherwise, I'm just not ever going to want to write, am I? So to kind of speed up this process so I could finish this chapter within 1 month, I had this idea to do a writing sprint. The idea was that I would clear a lot of space 5 days in a row to sit down and hone in on this chapter and do nothing but write. And enjoy life a bit, but write. That was my number one goal. This part I like to call the battle. I'm about 5 months into writing and I'm halfway through chapter 2. And I'm at that point again where I'm just like, fuck it, I need to finish this chapter. So this is where I'm up to. I want to talk about BTS's formative years, being saved by ARMY. I really want to describe a lot about what it's like to enter into the special world of BTS and ARMY, the ARMYverse, or BTS's universe. I want to explore some of like the myths of the musician the myths present in BTS's work and like how they often in their lyrics, especially in Map of the Soul, embody Greek gods. Dionysus, anyone? And through that I want to introduce like the central crisis of their hero's journey adventure, because I'm structuring this whole chapter around the hero's journey. And even though I'm working with like fixed true events in BTS's life, I'm still crafting them into like an overarching narrative. So the way that I choose to show the things that have happened to BTS and the way that I weave it all together will form a narrative in this chapter. So in this part of the chapter, I'm explaining what it was like to first encounter BTS. And I write, "It was here amidst the crowded internet that I encountered what I believe to be one of the biggest phenomenons of my lifetime. Though I dearly wanted what I was feeling to be for me and me alone, I was part of a much bigger, for lack of a better word, plot. For beneath the surface of an all-singing, all-dancing, smiling face of capitalism troupe lies encoded meanings powerful enough to mobilize fans in their millions. Through the aesthetic contact provided by the bright flashing lights of the K-pop machina, fans are able to experience powerful myths that harken back a millennia and take root in the deepest recesses of the collective unconscious." So that's kind of then what I have to spend the rest of the chapter backing up. I'm going back to bed. This just isn't working. I'm so tired. It's 9:46 and I am having some luck with my writing. I was just reviewing my work. I always kind of start with a review of my work, maybe not reading the whole chapter because that can take too long, but just like reading what I wrote yesterday and then reading the section above it, and reading other parts of the chapter that it links back to. And I realized that I needed to write a better like segue kind of introduction to this part that I'm working on. And what came to me is that I really wanted to, in this part of the book, introduce BTS as the underdogs and kind of explore the myth of the underdog and use that to kind of frame what I'm talking about in this part of the chapter. I really don't want to be doing this right now. It's so hard to focus. I've written like 241 words. Once again, not that word count counts too much, but far out, like to be spending this much time. I'm trying to give like a cool picture of the world of ARMY, and it's so hard, and it's always been so hard. I've been writing about ARMY now for 5 years and in multiple books. How many books? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 books? 5 books where I have attempted to define and chronicle and understand and outline who ARMY are. And it doesn't get any easier because you have to write a whole book or more to understand who ARMY are, because they're millions and millions of individual people who are purely united in a love of BTS. And even then, that's up for debate, because some people don't love all 7 members, but some people still call themselves ARMY. And how do I briefly introduce this world and give a accurate and succinct overview that is really interesting and move the fuck on? It's really hard. Lunchtime. Ooh. It is 1 o'clock and I'm still writing, but I'm making really good progress. Let me tell you how many words I've done, because that's a thing. I am at 1,354 words. That's happened just like in the past hour. I'm actually like progressing this and it's actually happening. I'm not as tired as I thought I would be. Like, this is perhaps the happiest I ever am when I am writing and it's flowing and I'm making really good progress. Nothing can compare to this feeling for me. I can see it all coming together, things that have just been like in my head for years and years, and things that I've been hoping and dreaming for. It's been a good day, but the hardest part is still before me. I've already reviewed what I wrote for the past 2 days, and I've edited it, I've rearranged it, and now I'm ready to start writing this next section, which is really important because it's the entire argument of the whole chapter. The mythology of iconicity, showing the link between mythology, ancient mythology, archetypes, contemporary mythology, storytelling, narratives, and how that creates icons. And 2 days is probably not enough to write all of it, but I think I have it all within me. And I have really been doing well at getting out of my head and into my writing body, which sounds really strange, because I already have all the info in here and I need to stop being in my head about it and just write. I wrote 1,300 words today. It's just happening. It's happening. I've got to find a way to push through today. I'm just going to stay in bed and take it really slow. And then as soon as this pain subsides a little bit, I'm going to start writing. I'm trying to write, and I think I can do it. I'm still in pain and I'm so fatigued. I've been sleeping so much, but if I just keep going, if I find a way to write and look after myself today, I can get it done. I am so close to the end now. It's a leap day today, an extra day, and that's exactly what I need to finish this chapter. I've got maybe 2 good hours of writing in me, and then I have to get ready and go to work. It's 9 o'clock. All I have to do is focus for the next 2 hours. All I have to do is focus. All I have to do is focus. It's 10 o'clock. And I'm having like a stress reaction. My body is shaking. I feel like I want to cry. Just the pressure of knowing I have to leave for work in 2.5 hours means that I can't focus on this. And the more pressure I put myself under to do it, the worse it's getting. Just after I finished filming before, I seemed to have some kind of anxiety reaction. My body started going numb and I just got really, really stressed and upset. Despite like mentally letting go of writing today and being like, no, I can't get it done, that's okay, I'm not going to push, but my body didn't get the memo. So my hormones are so dysregulated that any kind of pressure or stress, which is only natural when trying to write something or live life, even if it's very positive, it's being interpreted as a complete attack. It's not just any particular myth that an icon must embody. It has to be one that seeks to resolve acute tensions people feel between their own lives and society's prevailing ideology. A widespread ideology may be that thinness is the most desirable body type. The tension here arises from the fact that many people are not thin. This contradiction between ideology and reality can produce intense desires and anxieties, fueling the demand for myths. An icon who embodies this myth, for example, is Kim Kardashian, who famously uses her body as her art form. Kardashian contorts her appearance to current beauty standards and allows those who watch on to experience the myth of a desirable body. An icon is a performance, and part of what the icon is performing is a myth. The performer that embodies the most compelling, powerful myth is the icon that is remembered. And, most interestingly of all, the most successful icons are those performing the myth of rebellion. Now, I hope to kind of challenge some kind of ideas about Kim Kardashian with that, because I think it's a great example, firstly, because pretty well everyone knows who she is. And pretty well everyone in my world at least thinks that she is vapid, and that people who use their bodies are mindless, and that there's no art form to it, and that they're not serving a greater purpose. So how could they possibly be a powerful icon that's embodying a myth? How exactly are they servicing society? She's a billionaire for a reason, right? She's an icon for a reason. People watch her for a reason. What is that reason? Why are we giving her power? I watch her. Actually, she embodies many wonderful traits that I aspire to. So what is it that she's addressing? What anxiety or desire is she resolving within my life? And it is the desire to be intensely loved and to have a desirable body that is being sold to us by every company under the sun. She contorts her body. Her body is her art form. How she presents herself is her art form. And so through this lens of mythology and icon, we can start to understand how Kim operates, consciously or not, though I do believe it is very conscious. And I appreciate using her as an example because it does challenge people's ideas of what she does. And it brings up many different and interesting, intriguing, important dialogues about different kinds of art forms and how people use their bodies, and how people using their bodies and fashion and beauty are artists of a different kind. They're artists of identity, which is a far harder art form than most understand. I digress. This stage is called The Return. I'm finally done. Tomorrow I start chapter 3. I don't have anything left to say. Like, that process started off really good, and then my health deteriorated and everything fell apart. And I was pushed to a limit I didn't think I would be, purely because of my health. And I just really hope that doesn't happen again. 6 writing sessions over 11 days, roughly 30 hours spent writing, 7,000 words. Not that word count really matters, but gee, I had to work really hard to get those 7,000 words and research them and refine them. This chapter ended up being far bigger than I could have imagined. It's bigger than the first chapter, and it is dense, which has been the feedback from readers so far, but it's so necessary. I think I will probably go back and redraft it at a certain stage, but it doesn't need it right now. Like, it is solid. When talking about mythology, icons, archetypes, the collective unconscious, BTS, like, nothing compares to them. And I'm so glad that I was able to use them as an example in this chapter. And I really hope people, especially people who are not fans of BTS or have not much idea of who they are and what they do, really get something out of their involvement in this chapter. So yes, much bigger than I could have ever expected. And it took me on a very confronting journey with my health that took me right back to the beginnings of my chronic illness when I was writing Idle Limerence 4 years ago. But these patterns happen for a reason. They come back around so I can respond differently. And I looked after myself and I finished writing. And I finished the chapter. 2 chapters down. And because I removed a few chapters from the overall outline, there's just 7 more to go.